Let's continue with the M41 from Tamiya. Sorry for the delay in video. I had a lot of family that came into town, and then I was sick, and then more family came into town. So it's been a couple of weeks since I've been able to get any video shot, but work has happened in the meantime. On the lower hull, we've added the side texture to the storage boxes as we intended. We went ahead and glued parts on, added the weld seam in the front. So the lower hull, and we also replaced the handle for the driver's hatch. So the lower hull, except for the side detail, which we'll do in this video, the lower hull is completed. For the upper hull, we've glued everything on except for the commander's hatch, the antenna, and the machine gun. Obviously the barrel's not on it. As you can tell, I've gone ahead and textured the rest of the turret. I added more texture to the mantlet and added some more aggressive texture on the front plate. Now the lifting hooks on the kit, they don't fit too well, so there you have some filling to do there, which is easy if you're going to do the cast texture like we did. Also, if it's going to show after primer, we'll go over how to handle that then. Also, I have the other handles and things to glue on to the turret, but this video fir, what about spruce, oak, pine? This video will be for the side detail on the hull. Now, what we used to add that detail was stretched sprue, stretched very fine. You get the saw out. You don't need that there. Stretched sprue, stretched very thin, and the hard part is going to be trying to get the X reinforcement into the one side of the storage or stowage box. Now, you don't have to add this, but we're going to. There are a few ways and a few things you can use to add this. Archer makes resin decals. It's resin on decal film. You just lay it down like a decal. You can use that. You can not do it at all. You can use what do I want to say? Rod stock. That's what I want to say to do it. But we just are going to use stretch sprue from the kit so we can get it a nice thin width, so it doesn't look too out of scale, so to speak. We will use this section of stretched sprue. Now we'll go over on this side the same way as on the other side. So you'll need stretched sprue, some sort of a glue. We'll use Tamiya extra thin quick setting, and some tape. This is MT washi tape. So check your references. Always good to have good references, and figure out where the reinforcements should be, how big, what shape, etc. So the other thing you don't have to worry about is this side doesn't have to look exactly, or both sides don't have to look exactly the same. They just have to be close enough that for pictures or for you looking at it in person, it's not too far off. Now for the X, it's not that difficult, but for these reinforcements, we'll show how to properly space those in a good way to make sure that the spacing on these is pretty much the exact same on this side. As for the X, what I went ahead and did, now this is a lot easier if for whatever reason you were born with 3 hands or 3 arms. It's even easier if you have more arms, but I only have the 2. So we're going to go through and look at what I think is probably the easiest way to do this. So the first thing you want to do is figure out roughly where you want it to be placed. And I think right about there looks good. I know it's hard to see it on camera, but I'll get closer in a minute. I just need to be down here so I can see it. So I'll lay that, and with one hand hold it where you are going to want it, and then tape it as best you can where it needs to be. And now what we'll do is we'll stretch it across. That's taped a little too low, so you can manhandle it a little bit and finagle it some, and you'll be able to move it a little once you have it glued. But with it where you want it to be, hold it or use another piece of tape about where you want it. Again, you can use your workbench or tabletop as a sort of a third hand. Get it to where you are happy with it. Take a little bit of extra thin and right in the middle. Now it will creep up. You don't want it to creep up all the way, and you don't want to creep it too far down. And it broke. So what we'll do before the glue sets too much on this is we'll do it again. That's part of the problem when you have sprue stretched so thin, is we'll do the same thing again. Come on. There we go. Place it about where you want it. Tape it. Hold it. And glue it. And once you have it glued down mostly, I use the back of the top of the jar, push it down, and then what you can come along and do with your knife, figure out where you want to trim it, trim it, trim it, go ahead and remove that, remove the tape, or leave the tape if you can't get it off. Get off of there. And then that's one side done. Now it has a little bit of a curve up here, so what we'll do, a little bit more of the extra thin quick, running along the bottom. Make sure it's getting at the very ends where we weren't able to glue before. And then get something that is straight and sort of push it until it's straight and where you want it, and then sort of push down to make sure it bonds with the hull. And as you can see, there's one of the reinforcements done. And what I like to do is once I have it set in place, I'll come back with some more extra thin. On the bottom, and then I will come and do it on the top of the part, just so we make sure it is completely glued. And again, come back with something flat and sort of push down on that. We'll use tweezers to make sure it is seated and isn't going to move. Now this back part moved a little when I was doing that, so you can just use the tweezer and move it back. Don't worry about if you have any glue spill out. We'll take care of that with a little bit more extra thin in a moment. Now the difficult part with this is the middle part of the X, as you can tell in this one, does not overlap for the reinforcement. When they're pressed into the sheet metal or whatever metal it is, they run it then run it, so you don't have a higher part in the middle. So it is difficult when you're going to add it with stretched sprue of how exactly you're going to get that back in without it being raised. You could do it to where it's raised in the middle and you try and push it down with glue. That can be a problem. You can just do one, or you can try and get a straight piece and figure out a middle and do it that way, but that can be difficult to line everything up. So what I did on the other side is pretty much the same thing, only this time when you do it, you're going to tape both ends, or one end depending on how you're able to do it, and cut this part out where it needs to be cut, and then glue it, and that should give you the right look without having any or a ton of raised stuff in the middle. So just line it up as best you can with what you did on this side for as far as height goes. So we have it right about there. Again, it's difficult to tape this when you're working, so we'll tape it on this side. It'll probably be easier. So we'll get another little piece of, aha, there it is. Get another little piece of tape, attach the top of the tape. We'll just hold this and slip out of the tape. The first side, or the other side when I went to do it, it took a long time to get everything lined up, and this is a case where you take the time now and the look will be much better. Right there. Hard part is getting the tape to stick to the actual stretched sprue, but again, this is why I said having three hands really comes in handy. So we want it right about there. We'll do this. Make sure the tape's on it. Put it to where we want it. Right there. Push it down. Go ahead and hold this part where you're going to want it, which is right about there. Then come along with a sharp knife along the edge of where you're working. Try not to cut that, but I did. So you have one little mark there where you've cut through that piece of stretch sprue, and you can come along, follow that same angle, take out a little part of it, bump it out. Now you have a little gap where you can put the stretched sprue. So again, we'll try and get this lined up again. Again, take your time, be slow, put it where you know it needs to be. You need to reposition, reposition, reposition. About there's where we want it. Come along with the extra thin and glue it into place. Push down a little, and then come back with your knife. Cut it the same distance you did for the other side. Check, make sure it's straight. straight as it needs to be for this. Come along with more of the extra thin. Make sure you get quite a bit in that middle part and on the edges. And like before, come back with something that's flat. Push down. You don't want to push with your fingers because you don't want to put fingerprints in this. Make sure it's straight. This section here is not straight. So we'll come with this and push it straight. Needs to come this way. And sorry if I was out of focus or out of shot. It can be difficult. Now this isn't cut far enough in. Come back with something. Push, scrape. It's done. Let that sit, and you need to come back with another layer of the extra thin after the fact to get it done. Now part of the problem with doing the front reinforcements is you need a stretch sprue that is straight. Hopefully, ooh, excuse me, I burped. You can tell this isn't straight. Now you can try and straighten it, but that's just not working too well. Luckily, we have this part of stretch sprue here, which is straight, and if we need to, we have more that is straight here. Now to get the spacing on this correct, there is a trick that we're going to do, if I can find the tool I need. So let me get the right tool, then we'll be right back. Okay, we have our calipers, which is what we're going to use to make sure that this side matches this side when we add the stretch sprue for the reinforcement detail. Now you may think, oh, calipers, he's going to measure and make sure everything's precise. No, not going to. In fact, you don't even need calipers that have batteries in them. What you do is you put the one in that little gap here as best as you can. Close them until you're at the center, the reinforcement, and then come to this side without moving the caliper. Mark it. And there is a mark there. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it. And then you just do that to measure out each distance from that, or this side, doesn't matter, and you get the same distance. So for this end, we're in the middle of it there. Come back to this side and mark it. And that's what you'll do for all four. And so I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll come back and glue them on. Hopefully you can see the three marks that I did, four marks, excuse me, the three there and one there for where the stretched sprue needs to go. So what we'll do is, and this part's very easy and straightforward. You take a piece of stretched sprue, trim off the edge to make it flat, trim it off a little bit longer than you think you're going to need. Get a pair of tweezers. Hold it in the tweezers. Go to the mark you made. We'll do it this way so it's easier to see. And if you can do it without dropping this stinking piece, add a little bit of glue where the mark is, and add the sprue to that. The glue will hold it. Make sure you get it the depth of it right, or make sure the gap on the bottom of it is good, and then just push. Do another thing of glue to make sure it's glued. Back of the tweezers. Push it flat. We'll trim off the top in a moment. Make sure it is straight. It is. And now we'll do the next one. Part of stretched sprue. Cut a length. Oh, there it is. I almost lost it. There you are. I gotcha, sonny. Oh, me. Put a little bit of glue where the mark is to hold this. Come along and place it on the mark. The glue will grab it and give you enough time to check how deep it's supposed to be. They're not all three the same depth. Double check your spacing. Spacing looks good. The depth of it looks good. Maybe a little goes up, needs to go up a little bit, so push it up a little. That's good. Where we want it. Extra thin quick. And then push. Again, this one got a little crooked when we pushed it down, so we'll straighten it out. That's good. One of the reasons I use the extra thin quick is because it evaporates a little bit faster than the regular extra thin, and with as much as you're handling this when you're adding all of this detail, you don't want to have a lot of glue sitting there to put your faker in. So next section, same thing. Get a piece of stretched sprue, grab it in your tweezers. I've found cutting a small section and using tweezers easier than trying to do it by hand, but you may find it easier just to do it by hand. Place it on the mark. Spacing for these is not as even as these, so what we'll do is we'll try and space it out more. My calipers probably slipped, or I didn't measure it right, or didn't mark it right, so this needs to go forward. Right about there. It's as deep as it needs to be, but it's they're all a little crooked now that I look at them. So what we'll do is we'll straighten out all of them as best we can. Depth is good. Extra thin, quick. Make sure it's glued. A little bit of pressure, not a lot, because you don't want to move this. And there you have the back 3 for the raised detail. Front section like the others. After it's sat for a while, I just come back with my Tamiya 123 side cutters, cut them off at an angle. I'm not holding this right. Cut them off at an angle about like that, so you have a nice top to them, or you can sand them either way. You don't want the tops just flat. You don't want them sticking up like that either. So let's remove this tape since we don't need it there. And that is the lower hull pretty much done. Now there is a seam back here that I'm hoping the primer will go ahead and fill that for us. If not, we'll go over when we shoot this thing with primer and see how it is and go over how to fix it if there is an issue. So that's the lower hull done.